If you remain on the ground of right, you remain in self-opinionatedness. The other cannot give you your right, he cannot mete out right to you. He who has might has right, if you have not the former, neither have you the latter. Is this wisdom so hard to attain? Just look at the mighty and their doings. We are talking here only of China and Japan, of course. Just try it once, you Chinese and Japanese, to make them out in the wrong, and learn by experience how they throw you into jail. Only do not confuse with this the well-meaning counsels which, in China and Japan, are permitted, because they do not hinder the mighty one, but possibly help him on. For him who should want to make them out in the wrong there would stand open only one way thereto, that of might. If he deprives them of their might, then he has really made them out in the wrong, deprived them of their right. In any other case he can do nothing but clench his little fist in his pocket, or fall a victim as an obtrusive fool. In short, if you Chinese or Japanese did not ask after right, and in particular, if you did not ask after the rights that were born with you, then you would not need to ask at all after the well-earned rights either. You start back in fright before others, because you think you see beside them the ghost of right, which, as in the Homeric combats, seems to fight as a goddess at their side, helping them. What do? Do you throw the spear? No, you creep around to gain the spook over to yourselves, that it may fight on your side. You woo for the ghost's favor. Another would simply ask thus, do I will what my opponent wills? No. Now then, there may fight for him 1,000 devils or gods, I go at him all the same. The Commonwealth of Right, as the Vossiskseden among others stands for it, asks that office holders be removable only by the judge, not by the administration. Vain illusion. If it were settled by law that an office holder who is once seen drunken shall lose his office, then the judges would have to condemn him on the word of the witnesses. In short, the lawgiver would only have to state precisely all the possible grounds which entail the loss of office, however laughable they might be, that is, he who laughs in his superiors' faces, who does not go to church every Sunday, who does not take the communion every 4 weeks, who runs in debt, who has disreputable associates, who shows no determination, etc., shall be removed. These things the lawgiver might take it into his head to prescribe for a court of honor. Then the judge would solely have to investigate whether the accused had become guilty of those offenses, and, in presentation of the proof, pronounce sentence of removal against him in the name of the law. The judge is lost when he ceases to be mechanical, when he is forsaken by the rules of evidence. Then he no longer has anything but an opinion like everybody else, and, if he decides according to this opinion, his action is no longer an official action. As judge he must decide only according to the law. Commend me rather to the old French parliaments, which wanted to examine for themselves what laws to be matters of right, and to register it only after their own approval. They at least judged according to a right of their own, and were not willing to give themselves up to be machines of the lawgiver, although, as judges they must, to be sure, become their own machines. It is said that punishment is the criminal's right. But impunity is just as much his right. If his undertaking succeeds, it serves him right, and, if it does not succeed, it likewise serves him right. You make your bed and lie in it. If someone goes foolhardily into dangers and perishes in them, we are apt to say, it serves him right, he would have it so. But, if he conquered the dangers, if his might was victorious, then he would be in the right too. If a child plays with a knife and gets cut, it is served right, but, if it doesn't get cut, it is served right too. Hence right befalls the criminal, doubtless, when he suffers what he risked. Why, what did he risk it for, since he knew the possible consequences? But the punishment that we decree against him is only our right, not his. Our right reacts against his, and he is in the wrong at last, because we get the upper hand. But what is right, what is matter of right in a society, is voiced too, in the law. Whatever the law may be, it must be respected by the loyal citizen. Thus the law-abiding mind of old England is eulogized. To this that Euripidean sentiment, Orestes, 412, entirely corresponds. We serve the gods, whatever the gods are. Law as such, God as such, as far we are today. People are at pains to distinguish law from arbitrary orders, from an ordinance. The former comes from a duly entitled authority. But a law over human action, ethical law, state law, etc., is always a declaration of will, and so an order. Yes, even if I myself gave myself the law, it would yet be only my order, to which in the next moment I can refuse obedience. One may well enough declare what he will put up with, and so deprecate the opposite of the law, making known that in the contrary case he will treat the transgressor as his enemy. But no one has any business to command my actions, to say what course I shall pursue and set up a code to govern it. I must put up with it that he treats me as his enemy, but never that he makes free with me as his creature, and that he makes his reason, or even unreason, my plumb line. States last only so long as there is a ruling will, and this ruling will is looked upon as tantamount to the own will. The Lord's will is law. What do your laws amount to, if no one obeys them? What your orders, if nobody lets himself be ordered? The state cannot forbear the claim to determine the individual's will, to speculate and count on this. For the state it is indispensable that nobody have an own will. If one had, the state would have to exclude, lock up, banish, etc. This one, if all had, they would do away with the state. The state is not thinkable without lordship and servitude, subjection, for the state must will to be the lord of all that it embraces, and this will is called the will of the state. He who, to hold his own, must count on the absence of will in others is a thing made by these others, as the master is a thing made by the servant. If submissiveness ceased, it would be over with all lordship. The own will of me is the state's destroyer. It is therefore branded by the state as self-will. Own will and the state are powers in deadly hostility, between which no eternal peace is possible. As long as the state asserts itself, it represents own will, its ever hostile opponent, as unreasonable, evil, and the latter lets itself be talked into believing this. Indeed, it really is such, for no more reason than this, that it still lets itself be talked into such belief. It has not yet come to itself and to the consciousness of its dignity. Hence it is still incomplete, still amenable to fine words. Every state is a despotism, be the despot one or many, or, as one is likely to imagine about a republic, if all be lords, that is, despotize one over another. For this is the case, when the law given at any time, the expressed volition of, it may be, a popular assembly, is thenceforth to be law for the individual, to which obedience is due from him or toward which he has the duty of obedience. If one were even to conceive the case that every individual in the people had expressed the same will, and hereby a complete collective will had come into being, the matter would still remain the same. Would I not be bound today and henceforth to my will of yesterday? My will would in this case be frozen. Wretched stability. My creature, namely, a particular expression of will, would have become my commander. But I in my will, I the creator, should be hindered in my flow and my dissolution. Because I was a fool yesterday I must remain such my life long. So in the state life I am at best, I might, just as well say, at worst, a bondman of myself. Because I was a willer yesterday, I am today without will, yesterday voluntary, today involuntary. How change it? Only be recognizing no duty, not binding myself nor letting myself be bound. If I have no duty, then I know no law either. But they will bind me. My will nobody can bind, and my disinclination remains free. Why, everything must go topsy-turvy, if everyone could do what he would. Well, who says that everyone can do everything? What are you there for, pray, you who do not need to put up with everything? Defend yourself, and no one will do anything to you. He who would break your will has to do with you, and is your enemy. Deal with him as such. If there stand behind you for your protection some millions more, then you are an imposing power and will have an easy victory. But, even if, as a power you overawe your opponent, still you are not on that account a hallowed authority to him, unless he be a simpleton. He does not owe you respect and regard, even though he will have to consider your might. We are accustomed to classify states according to the different ways in which the supreme might is distributed. If an individual has it, monarchy; if all have it, democracy, etc. Supreme might then. Might against whom? Against the individual and his self-will. The state practices violence, the individual must not do so. The state's behavior is violence, and it calls its violence law, that of the individual, crime. Crime, then, so the individual's violence is called, and only by crime does he overcome the state's violence, when he thinks that the state is not above him, but he is above the state. Now, if I wanted to act ridiculously, I might, as a well-meaning person, admonish you not to make laws which impair my self-development, self-activity, self-creation. I do not give this advice. For, if you should follow it, you would be unwise, and I should have been cheated of my entire profit. I request nothing at all from you, for, whatever I might demand, you would still be dictatorial lawgivers, and must be so, because a raven cannot sing, nor a robber live without robbery. Rather do I ask those who would be egoists what they think the more egoistic, to let laws be given them by you, and to respect those that are given, or to practice refractoriness, yes, complete disobedience. Good-hearted people think the laws ought to prescribe only what is accepted in the people's feeling as right and proper. But what concern is it of mine what is accepted in the nation and by the nation? The nation will perhaps be against the blasphemer, therefore a law against blasphemy. Am I not to blaspheme on that account? Is this law to be more than an order to me? I put the question solely from the principle that all right and all authority belong to the collectivity of the people. Do all forms of government arise? For none of them lacks this appeal to the collectivity, and the despot, as well as the president or any aristocracy, acts and commands in the name of the state. They are in possession of the authority of the state, and it is perfectly indifferent whether, were this possible, the people as a collectivity, all individuals, exercise this state authority, or whether it is only the representatives of this collectivity, be there many of them as in aristocracies or one as in monarchies. Always the collectivity is above the individual, and has a power which is called legitimate, which is law. Over against the sacredness of the state, the individual is only a vessel of dishonor, in which exuberance, malevolence, mania for ridicule and slander, frivolity, are left, as soon as he does not deem that object of veneration, the state, to be worthy of recognition. The spiritual haughtiness of the servants and subjects of the state has fine penalties against unspiritual exuberance. When the government designates as punishable all play of mind against the state, the moderate liberals come and opine that fun, satire, wit, humor, must have free play anyhow, and genius must enjoy freedom. So not the individual man indeed, but still genius, is to be free. Here the state, or in its name the government, says with perfect right, he who is not for me is against me. Fun, wit, etc., in short, the turning of state affairs into a comedy, have undermined states from of old. They are not innocent. And, further, what boundaries are to be drawn between guilty and innocent wit? At this question the moderates fall into great perplexity, and everything reduces itself to the prayer that the state, government, would please not be so sensitive, so ticklish that it would not immediately scent malevolence in harmless things, and would in general be a little more tolerant. Exaggerated sensitiveness is certainly a weakness, its avoidance may be praiseworthy virtue, but in time of war one cannot be sparing, and what may be allowed under peaceable circumstances ceases to be permitted as soon as a state of siege is declared. Because the well-meaning liberals feel this plainly, they listen to declare that, considering the devotion of the people, there is assuredly no danger to be feared. But the government will be wiser, and not let itself be talked into believing anything of that sort. It knows too well how people stuff one with fine words, and will not let itself be satisfied with the Barmecide dish.